Hey guys, this is Flashbacks. I'm Alex,
I'm Will.
And I'm Ben, a guest from the Superhero Stuff You Should Know podcast.
and we are.
Welcome, Ben.
Oh,
Thank
Sorry.
you.
it's
Thank
all
you.
good, man. It's all good. This one's off the cuff. Like Ben's been on my show before. He knows how laid
Yeah,
back
yeah,
these
yeah.
kind of
Mhm. For sure.
episodes
For
are.
sure.
But yeah,
Yes, the first time on this specific Flash show, but yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. So, anyway, we are here today to talk about the man in the yellow suit. What I usually ask my guests, and I can't ask Will because Will's been on this already, but
Mhm.
I asked them about their fandom of like the Flash, like what started them out on there, like how did they like what's your general fandom with the Flash? Are you a fan because of this show? Were you a fan of that character before? Like where do you come to this character from?
Yeah, so I think it's like the CW show is one of the big factors to it, but even before that, right? Like there was, of course, the Justice League animated series,
Mm-hmm.
Michael Rosenbaum, Wally West. Flash
Yep.
was a big part of it, as well as the fact that like I gained an interest in the other DC heroes when it was announced in around like 2006, 2007 that they were going to do, George Miller was going to do Justice League Mortal. And so I was like,
Yes.
oh, like there could be a new Batman and like other versions of these characters. I'm mainly familiar with Superman. I don't know that much about the others. So it got me into the show, but also got me into the mythology. Learned about Barry Allen and Wally West and sort of the death of Barry Allen and passing it over to Wally West, only for that to pretty much get immediately reversed in like maybe a year since me finding that out in Final Crisis. But it kind of cemented like, oh, cool, like there's this is a character who kind of creates the lighter side and the dynamic of the Justice League.
Yeah.
And then in Arrow, of course they introduced Grant Gustin as Barry Allen and set up that there's going to be the spin-off show, and I'm like, okay, I'm interested in it, and where they go with that because I was such a fan of Arrow, but also thought it was really interesting, but also really cool that like something that started as such a like it's grounded, it's going to be like Christopher Nolan Batman movies, and then season two they're just like, never mind, it's not going to be grounded, it's not going to be like Christopher Nolan Batman movies, it's gonna have comic book shit, there's a Speed Force like the hero. We're eventually going to go even like all out into shit, but yeah, the Flash kind of was like, hey, we've evolved into more of a comic book universe now, and the way that they presented it was like still had the DNA of Arrow in terms of the type of changes that they did, but ultimately it was like it was one that it just hit a different emotion. Like you feel it too whenever there's the scenes with him and his dad. And it got me into like trying to look up, okay, like this John Wesley Shipp guy's a fantastic actor. I want to see like him and the other stuff. So that's when I started looking up Flash 1990. And of course, as a Batman 89 fan, I just, from the first frame, I'm just like, oh, I fucking love this. It's Danny Elfman music with Shirley Walker doing the orchestra, the main score, the way that it all looks is kind of a mix of Anton Furst with like the Dick Tracy type of city to it. Like it's just got that style that I'm just like, I want more of this. And so it got me reading more into the Flash comics, and just the characters who were presented also were ones I was kind of introduced to for the first time. Ones who I like kind of already knew about vaguely, like Captain Cold, but finally kind of like got to know them a little better and sort of got to read up on like, okay, that's what the show did. What did the comics do? And this is kind of a segue into our main topic for this, but like it was a huge it was big for me when it came to the introduction of the Reverse Flash, because
Yeah.
it was a character I'd never really paid attention to. And then when they finally presented him, it went from like, oh, this guy's kind of lame. He's the Reverse Flash. He's in yellow. What the hell? Kind of lame. Somebody was like, what, does he run backwards? I told him that Reverse Flash was the villain. But then he
That's
shows
fine.
up and he's terrifying.
Yeah.
And he's also like Harrison Wells at the same time, and Tom Cavanaugh, who I was mainly familiar with from Ed, which was like one of those feel good comedy drama shows, is now playing creepy and is now playing the villain and stuff. And like he's the villain and no one else does, and it's just like it created such an awesome dynamic that to this day I think it's one of those where I'm just like, for all the years of being a comic book fan, I never thought I would have like a new like favorite like top five supervillain. But Reverse Flash definitely got up there once I saw what they did with it, and once I started looking into the comics to see like, okay, like what is this guy really like outside of it seeming kind of lame when he first showed up in 50s and 60s. So like it was big for that reason, and I still hold a version of Reverse Flash in high regard in the show.
Right. I know that I've kind of gone over this before, but I have kind of like a weird kind of like because my dad worked at NBC, and so I think he had gotten at some point the hold on, I'll actually show it. The
Is it from Ed?
No.
Okay.
He got this.
Yes, the 1990
Oh,
Flash.
nice.
That actually have autographed. I know you guys can't really see
who autographed it?
John Wesley Shipp.
Sweet.
Yeah, and so
that's awesome.
I've met both Flashes now, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
But have no interest in being the third one. But
I didn't think so.
Wait, but what about Teddy Sears, man? You can meet Jay Garrick.
He'd be cool to meet, but Michael Rosenbaum would also be cool too, because that's like another Flash. Just you all know which one I'm talking about. But anyway, I had discovered that show because he had gotten like a bunch of different DVDs. That was one of them, and I was like, let me just check this out because I didn't know anything about it, and so I just popped it in, watched some of it. It was good. I definitely have more of a appreciation for it now than I think I did back then. I used to be much more, I feel like overly critical over stuff. I mean, I was a teenager. Like that's just I feel like that comes with the territory. Like you're way more critical and kind of negative about stuff when you're younger, you're that age, like everything sucks, that kind of thing. So it's one of those type
this stuff is just cheesy.
Yeah
I could have written this better. This guy's not a good actor, like all that type of stuff.
Yeah, and it was funny because like some of the stuff I really liked, like there's still some episodes, and we'll cover this in the future, but I kind of got like, because the Flash 2014 show is definitely a legacy show, and even especially in today's episode, like with some of the casting, like it helped that I'd seen this show before, so that when other things like Tina McGee, she shows up in this episode briefly as like not the one from that show, obviously, but like the same, like it's like a multiverse thing. Like they're kind of, even if they don't outright say it, like they're kind of establishing either it's like just a if you know kind of thing, or it's like they're establishing a multiverse. It's kind of like just pick whichever one you want at that point.
Well, they do use a photo too from the 1990
event.
show.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that is. Yeah, they do use a photo from the 1990 show in the background to kind of show the young version of her as another like little Easter egg sort of thing, which I thought was really cool. I don't remember seeing that the first time I saw it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And right around the time that this episode came out too, I remember because we were at York Tech at the time.
Yeah.
They had just announced that Mark Hamill was going to come back to play the Trickster in live action show as well at the same time.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into those. I know that what I might do, and this is a look behind the curtain, but certain episodes like the Trickster one, well, me and you might go back in time and watch the original Trickster appearance, so that we both have more context for when he shows up in the modern show, and also the fans, so they can get like have an excuse to watch it. Most of that stuff is online through various means for free. I know that's super cheap on YouTube right now. I think it's like $1.99 an episode. So I mean, if you guys want to go that route too, I'm pretty sure I saw it in Walmart for like $12. So I mean, like it's not hard to find. But yes, we'll definitely go into that. I'll just go into a brief summary of it, and we'll decide if it's a good summary for it or what parts that we think it left off, and kind of go into like our favorite moments, maybe some critiques, some stuff like that. So I'll just go ahead and go into it. So The Flash, season 1, episode 9. Barry enjoys holiday traditions with Joe and Iris and is faced with his nemesis. A touching moment with Iris is interrupted by Eddie's arrival. It's a good summary. What do you guys think?
Makes a mountain out of a molehill when it comes to that Eddie thing. It's like that's the part you're going to highlight, not that Ronnie's back.
Yeah,
And then finds out that
seriously.
Ronnie's back. I think that's a big thing. You're not going to highlight that.
Yeah. So, am I not the only one? Did anyone else forget that Ronnie was in this early in
I
the
forgot that Ronnie
season?
was going to be part of this one.
Yes.
Like I knew he came back at some point in season 1, but you think at the end of season 1, he's full on Firestorm because that's where he dies. But like you don't remember when he came back. You just know at some point he came back. So like when Caitlin was in the parking garage, I'm like, what the hell is this? Is this Reverse Flash showing up? And then it went to Ronnie. I'm like, oh, okay, this is when that happened.
Yep, I forgot about it too because I think my earliest memory of Ronnie being Firestorm again that I can remember was when the Arrow actually Flash and Firestorm all faced off against Reverse Flash in that one episode too.
But yeah, we definitely and we'll definitely go into this more. Did you guys back when you were watching this? Did you? And I know that Ben, you mentioned earlier the whole Eobard-thon thing. Did you remember who you thought the Reverse Flash was? Did you think it was Harrison Wells at this point, or did you think it was someone else?
They did the Arrow thing where Tommy Merlin showed up and people were just like, well, he's obviously Merlin, and then it was like, no, it's his dad, that type of thing. So like you can't once you see that where like the Arrowverse loves to do this thing where they present to you like this person with a name and you think they're going to be that person, but then someone else turns out to be that person type of thing. Once they did that, I kind of had the feeling early on that like this Eddie Thawne guy is just another Tommy Merlin. He's a red herring. And stuff because so obviously this Wells guy is he's very suspicious. He's not really needs to use the wheelchair. He stabs a dude at the end of the episode 2. So like you kind of know he's not like somebody had like a weird theory. I remember I was looking at somebody's stuff about like, well, Tom Cavanaugh kind of looks like an older Grant Gustin, so maybe he's Future Barry. And I'm like, so Future Barry just outright stabs Simon Stagg to death in this continuity. That'd be weird, but yeah, I'm just like he's probably Eobard-Thawne. That seemed to be the most sound theory. So it was very satisfying when we get to the end with the Merry Christmas part, where that's kind of pretty much revealed.
Yeah, and I know that for like I was going to bring that the Entertainment Weekly. I was reading a recap just to get all my thoughts together, and they mentioned that on like an old article from back in 2014. I know the thing that initially threw me off about this, and we'll get into more of the broad strokes of the episode and stuff like that in a minute, but the thing that threw me off was there's a scene where he goes like Reverse Flash gets lured into that whole force field thing and then like grabs
Wells
and starts beating the shit out of him. And so like that kind of threw me off a little bit. I'm like, wait, how does this work? Like that was an effective kind of moment. And I actually had to look up because I didn't remember off the top of my head. I'm like, wait, how do they explain this? Because obviously I know they're the same person. How they explain that like Reverse Flash beat him up? And I think it's like a speed mirage type thing or something like that.
That's a very impressive speed mirage because Wells is still quote unquote injured by himself, I guess, in the thing while Flash and Reverse Flash are outside fighting. So I'm like, I'm not really sure how that part worked from his perspective, but everything else, I think it's the part where he's just like, oh, I'm not like the Flash at all. I'm the reverse. Like that was like a pre-recorded thing he did.
Yeah.
So everything from because you see the Lightning take Wells and bring him in. You could kind of say that like he was fast enough to like create the illusion that he was being like taken out or something like that, and then Speed Mirage version of him beats him up inside the thing.
I mean,
I also think that. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, you're good. Go ahead.
I also think that he kind of said it best when he said that his goals are beyond our understanding, so it's just not something that we'll fully grasp with that too.
That was the writers. The writers were saying that.
Yeah. We don't know where this is going.
Yes.
Though they kind of did, because since a lot of that plot is from that Berlanti script from like 2011. So it doesn't make sense.
Do you want to briefly go into like a kind of brief summary? Because I know Will doesn't know about that.
Yeah. So earlier this year, my show on superhero stuff, you should know, we covered a lot of the at least what's out there that's been released of the scripts for unmade versions of the Flash movie. And in around like 2011 or so, it was Greg Berlanti, along with Mark Guggenheim, the ones who would in the future end up working on the Arrowverse, along with Michael Green, who I don't think would. But all three of them worked on a Flash script that was essentially the like blueprint for the 2014 Flash show. So like I think a lot of people described it as like combine the pilot with the Captain Cold episode with some of the Reverse Flash stuff and the finale, and you kind of get like the script where it is Barry's origin. It's Star Labs. He's working with Star Labs. There is a team, kind of a team Flash at Star Labs, but it's not Cisco or Caitlin. They just don't have the same personalities or personalities at all in that draft. Eobard Thawne is the head of Star Labs, but of course turns out to be, the villain. I think he's called the Black Flash in that one because he's in a black suit and stuff. And Captain Cold is in it, and he's kind of like a weird Heath Ledger Joker wannabe type. It sounded like it basically was the initial blueprint, but it still had the Thawne is basically creating the Flash and using him so that he can like go back home type of thing using the particle accelerator. So like all that stuff from the finale is in that script, and so they just reuse that for season 1, which can't blame them. I would too.
Yeah. I know that the whole and I think that if this show if it they had some of the elements that they used later, like the whole time remnant thing, I think that they probably would have just gone with that other Reverse Flash was just a time remnant type thing instead of a speed mirage. I think that would be more neat and would kind of cover their tracks a little bit more than this whole speed mirage thing. I don't know.
I was literally thinking the same thing in preparation for talking tonight, because the time remnant thing that they introduced later on, obviously in storytelling, it always feels kind of like a cop out to me, but I feel like it's still I guess a better way to explain it than just saying, oh, it's a speed mirage.
Yeah,
he can do it. It makes sense, even though he's injured right now. But
yeah, to me, the speed mirage thing kind of falls apart when he is literally like on the floor bleeding in front of everybody. Because presumably like Eddie and Joe are like taking care of him and bringing him to the infirmary and stuff. But like he's doing that and he's like fighting Barry outside and getting hit by Firestorm at the same time. Like that's kind of like, I don't think you're that fast, Thawne. But I guess you are.
And and I'm not going to be this nitpicky person the whole time, but just like going to the beginning of the episode, we won't go beat by beat, but just this stood out to me. The episode opens with Barry running after the Reverse Flash, and does anybody else feel like he's obviously moving fast? The whole thing of his clothes burning up, that was a thing early on, right?
Yep. I think they forgot about that.
Yeah, it looks cool, so they're like, fuck it, we're just gonna have this because it looks awesome at the beginning.
They may have done some sort of explanation where his powers were to the point where he has some sort of protective layering as he's going. He creates protective layering on himself or something to basically explain that. But it's either that or that was just from some comic that I'm projecting into it. But I don't remember necessarily if they ever explained it. I think they just messed up and they were just like, looks cool. It doesn't make sense for him to change.
So another speed mirage. Yeah.
He's a speed mirage. Yes.
But just on a rewatch of this, I guess just going into it, the whole they're obviously decorating for Christmas and everything, and Barry gives Iris this thoughtful gift, going into what the description was talking about, and then Eddie comes in, and on this rewatch, I know I really liked Eddie the first time. I like him even more now, and my whole thing, I think I'm going to get a shirt that just reads Eddie did nothing wrong, because that's how I feel right now.
At least season 1 Eddie.
Yeah, Eddie's great. I don't know, what do you guys think?
I agree. I think when I first initially watched the show, I didn't want to like Eddie because I was like, oh, well, he seems like he's going to be an antagonist later on or something like that, right? And you're wanting to pull for Barry and, seeing him get together with Iris. But you're right, man. He's just a stand-up guy the whole time. Doesn't do anything wrong. And you see that all the way until the very end. That his main focus really is just protecting Iris and the people around him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always more interesting, I think, too, when like the boyfriend character you're supposed to hate because you want the leads to get together, when you present him as somebody who's likable, you know, and when somebody who is, you know, heroic in some ways. So I think it was to me, one of the weirdest scenes is what I call the double blackmail scene. I don't know if this stood out to you guys, but like Barry flat out blackmails Dr. Tina McGee about like, hey, like, do you want me to expose all this type of stuff? And then Joe approves it. He's just like, nice, Barry. I'm just like, really? And then right afterwards, just immediately afterwards, Eddie's just going to be like, I'm going to go over your head and go to sing if you don't let me on this Flash thing. And I'm just like, guys, it's one or the other in terms of the blackmail, but also why are we blackmailing people? Double beat right now. We could have found other ways to like make this happen.
Well, going into the whole theory thing about like, because that was something they mentioned in the summary, Entertainment Weekly, but they were talking about like, oh, like I can see why Wells likes you. You guys are very similar. Talking about the manipulation thing, like that fed into the whole like, oh, that's the future. You know, he's the future Barry or something like that. And I didn't really like that either. Like that was one of those moments where I'm like, that seems super out of character for Barry Allen. You can even tell after he gets the compliment and stuff about it. Like he doesn't feel good about it. Like I don't know if that's just something Grant played into, but you can tell he's not like all like smiling and thrilled about it. Like he doesn't feel great about what he just did. But
I think they're going off of the feeling that like, hey, because this is his mom's murderer, he's like doing whatever it takes and acting out of character. And you know, the Boy Scout Barry has temporarily left the station type of thing. I get that. I just also just didn't like Joe just immediately being like, nice, Barry. I'm just no, Joe, like, why are you down for this? You should just be like, Barry, what's going on? This is totally out of character. We don't do that.
I fully agree, because throughout the series, I think you find even as Barry starts to, you know, get angry about this or almost make this choice, Joe, I think, was always his kind of like moral center that would be able to talk him out of those things. So for him to like high five him on that felt really out of place.
Yeah. I don't think they thought that went through. They could have just changed it, like even just cut out nice and let Jesse L. Martin, who's already a great actor, just give Barry a look, just being like, where did that come from? You know, and then that's it. That's all you need. But to give him the high five, and that really jumped out to me. I'm just like, I don't think cops blackmailing somebody into giving them access to something plays very well. Now when we rewatch this, we forgot about it in 2014, but now I'm just like, yeah, it just doesn't hit the same way, does it?
Yeah, no.
And I'm really glad you said that too, man, because this show, this is different with Arrow. I was talking about this last time with Alex, right? Where Arrow is more action, but there's not a lot of great acting that takes place. But on The Flash, especially these first two seasons with Jesse L. Martin and with Tom Cavanaugh, like the acting is just top tier for a CW TV show. It's not something we've seen really.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Jesse L. Martin's always has been a great addition. And you know, every single time John Wesley Shipp shows up, I know you can't do 9 seasons of him in jail talking to Barry, but just God, all the way that's written, and even if they give him the most generic dialogue, like Shipp knows how to like just milk it for what it's worth to be like this great father-son dynamic that like afterwards when they announced like, oh, we're still going to do the Henry Allen thing in the movies, I'm just like, look, Billy Crudup, Ron Livingston, they're solid actors too, but you don't match up to what we saw of John Wesley Shipp, because how do you top that? You can't. The guy who's a former Flash who also is just really good at getting that emotion, and you know, he's a better actor now than he was back in the 1990 show when he was Flash. So like he's an even better, you know, gets even better performances, and it's amazing they got him to do Jay Garrick. But like the Henry Allen scenes are always great.
Definitely. Yeah. I know that for me, definitely you're speaking about Jesse L. Martin. Like he I forgot, and I obviously love him later in the show too. I love how smart they wrote his character, about how like he just immediately is like clued in onto Harrison Wells. He's like, I don't like this guy. There's something more that this guy is hiding and everything. And I think that's great. Like they allow him to be smart, and they allow him to kind of like figure stuff out and be honestly one of the smartest characters in the show. Like, honestly.
Yeah, no, I can see that. I'm glad that they didn't do the whole like he's got to keep a secret from Joe the entire season, like he knew since like the end of the pilot.
Yeah.
So I'm glad they kept that. I'm glad that there wasn't a ton of drama in this episode over Joe keeping it secret from Barry because Iris got threatened. I'm glad that like it was just kind of one beat. Why didn't you tell me? It's like because he threatened Iris, and Barry's like, all right, like that's fine
Yeah.
because like we're getting sick of the whole like, oh, you lied to me, this type of thing, or you kept this from me type of like that drama that's like almost always there, especially when in the TV versions of the stuff. That I just find it refreshing when it's just like, no, he's in on the secret, he's part of it, they're working together, he's working with Star Labs. There's no like big drama about like secret identity stuff from this specific character, at least. So I appreciate that, and I'm glad that they never killed him off.
Right. I know that they briefly flirted with not like the future stuff. We'll get to that stuff in the later seasons. I was about to have another spoiler. I know it's a rewatch podcast, but we'll get to that later. But
spoilers, Joe is alive at the end of the show.
Yes. But anyway, going into the whole thing, I know Iris gets crapped on a lot later on, but I do like this kind of like this version of Iris. Her character feels very different. She's more likable. She has more of a personality in this early like season 1 anyway.
Well, she has something to do, which in the later seasons they don't really give her anything to do. So.
It's very true.
The chemistry also feels different, like in that Christmas scene too, when he gives the gift to her. I'm just like, I kind of miss this, and I get it. It's different when they're playing with the whole like, hey, we're friends who kind of love each other, but we're not gonna admit it yet. Like we're not there. I get they're gonna play it differently compared to what later on when they're a married couple, but still, I'm just like, I miss some part of this. Like I feel like it didn't quite click the same way in other stuff. So like when I watched that scene in the opening with the gifts, I'm just like, oh, this is really nice, because it's been so long since we've seen it like this.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing too, and I've talked to this like about this, and we'll get back into the episode in a minute, but like something I definitely do miss with like this version of Barry versus the later seasons is that he's having fun here. Like he enjoys being a superhero, and like in the later seasons, like he just seems so tired and so like beat down by like the burden of being like this superhero and everything. Or maybe that's just Grant Gustin bleeding into it and
one more
to be
season.
done. I don't know. Yeah.
But it's also like this is where we had the good balance, among all the characters. It didn't feel like there was like it was still very much on Barry, but the subplots didn't really take away from Barry's story. All the stuff with Caitlin, Cisco and Ronnie stuff. And I feel like we run into that problem a lot in the later seasons, where like, just the final season, not to spoil too much on that, but there are episodes where Grant is barely in an episode.
Right.
And which sucks. It's like, it's the final season of The Flash. You're not going to have him. I get like scheduling wise, sometimes you need to stack him. And, he's not in this episode because he's in so much of this other episode that shooting wise, we couldn't make it happen. But that's where good storytelling comes into play. You figure, you have to figure that out. And I think that's the key sometimes to being a good TV writer is being able to figure out how do you manage the logistics with the creativity so that it doesn't feel like so transparent that like we couldn't get Grant this day for this shoot. So we had to do this. Like it has to feel like an actual legit story so that people, when they hear that Grant couldn't do it, they're like, oh, well, I guess that makes sense. But I didn't think about that. You need that type of reaction. But we're well before all this type of stuff. Like it feels like going back and revisiting an old friend when you go back to these seasons, which I think is the feeling that you're trying to capture here. With the podcast. It's like, oh yeah, like it's this version of Barry and Iris and Joe and this, the original version of Team Flash, and this version of Central City even, with Eddie and stuff. It's all like a nice warm blanket, it's welcoming you back, and you kind of have some of the later seasons in mind when you see stuff, but overall, like it's nice to sort of have that recaptured for you.
Exactly.
I fully agree, man. Because this show, these first like 2 or 3 seasons, was some of the best times that I remember having watching a show in general.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just such a special moment. A lot of these episodes, and there will be more coming up, especially the final 2 episodes of the season. I can't
Yeah.
wait to touch on those later.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just that same CW show formula where these first 2, maybe 3 seasons, we're going to give you a really great budget, great writing, all those things. We really care about it a lot. And then we're just going to keep milking it after, but with less care. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Superman and Lois next season.
Yeah.
We'll see what they do with it.
That's
Yeah.
definitely its own podcast. But anyway, I definitely getting into, I guess, back into the episode. And I know this is a trope in this kind of fiction. What is your guys' opinion about the whole trope of somebody being like somebody pining for someone who's in a relationship and them not really respecting it by still trying to pursue it in a certain way, like with Barry in this, like with the Flash, like trying to kind of like flirt with Iris and everything, and that kind of like, what's your opinion on that? Do you like that kind of thing, or do you think that's kind of, it doesn't make the person who's doing it look good?
I don't like it personally. And the reason being, and you don't even necessarily see Barry do this a lot in the first season, but you do see the Flash do it when
Yeah.
he's one on one with Iris. Is like, I guess it's because he's behind the mask, he can kind of be a little bit more of himself and how he would want to be
Mhm.
with her.
Mhm.
But it doesn't necessarily come across as a good look. And again, it just makes me like Eddie more. Like,
Mhm.
yeah.
I don't remember a lot of the dynamic between the two of them outside of this episode that we just rewatched. So going just off of this episode, it came off to me when he ends up like confessing his love to Iris. It kind of came off to me like I got to get this off my chest, not necessarily I'm trying to pursue you, and that he, maybe the act of that isn't necessarily respectful, but he was respectful in terms of not trying to like hang around right afterwards and be like, so you're gonna leave Eddie for me? We're gonna make out? We're gonna make out? We're gonna like he at least like walked away and been like, okay, I've made my peace. I know this is, and I've noticed it surprised me in that scene, but in a good way, that Iris cries when this happens. At first, I'm just like, well, he's not that like he's not that what he's saying is not that emotional to you, is it? But then I thought about it, I'm just like, well, I interpret it as like maybe part of her is crying because she knows she's losing a friend. She knows that this guy who she thought was this is actually this, and this is going to basically change things forever, which will, and for the better, as we'll see in the later seasons.
Yeah.
But for that moment, for her in that moment, it's the loss of a friend. And I thought that was a very, whether that's Candace Patton's choice or the director, I thought that was a very good choice for that specific scene, was to play it like that, at least. Or maybe I'm just projecting my own interpretation into that, and it's literally just she's crying just because she also secretly loves Barry, which could be another interpretation that I'm not going to be as. I mean, it makes sense too, but I just it's one where for that specific scene, I'm just like, I feel like this is more of just a confession thing more than him trying to get after her. And at the end, right, like he still acts as if like not necessarily if nothing's happened. He knows that it happened, but he is kind of being like, okay, like I know you're with Eddie now. I wish you two the best. I'm gonna stay out of it, at least for now. So I like how that specifically was played, and I don't remember how the trope played out before or after that, but for this specific episode, I was okay with it.
Yeah.
I agree. I like her response a lot better there. It's a lot better than she could have said, "What are you doing, step bro?" And that would have not been near as good.
Cue the music, and then she gets stuck in the washer.
Yes. And it's an awkward Christmas for everyone after that. So
Joe walks in.
Yeah.
Barry. Anyway, getting back on track. I did like that. Speaking about Eddie again, how he kind of keyed into the fact that like even before Iris noticed it, that like he's like, hey, does Barry like does he like you or something like romantically or like
Mhm.
he kind of he asked her that like
Yeah.
Ed, they make Eddie smart too, like they make him
Well, he's a
observant.
detective.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And yeah, like what do you think of that, Will? Like him being like, because usually in these kind of shows they don't play it like that. Like they play most of the people in there as like idiots, especially like the significant others of people that you want to get out of the way so the main guy can get there.
Yes, well, obviously he is a detective, but outside of that, I actually think it was really cool in a way because you notice kind of that Eddie realizes it the whole time, pretty much the whole season
Mm-hmm.
later on, especially.
Yeah.
But the entire time, it's not like a, oh, I just hate Barry, I'm gonna kick Barry's ass kind of thing. You know, he's still respectful over the whole situation, knowing that like that's her brother and everything. So.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah, they should have. When I was watching this, I was like, they should have done something where like Joe was like his father figure mentor, but not formally his father. Because how awkward was it in the
Yeah.
wedding? Seasons later,
Yes.
where the guy was like, are you for the are you the father of the bride or the groom?" And he's like, "Both." And you're like, why? Why did you write this? Uh, but for Eddie, like, yes, he is a detective. Yes, it's smart. He figured it out. But also, I wouldn't say this is his world's greatest detective moment when Barry literally gifts her wedding rings.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, seems awfully strong of a gift. Like no matter what occupation you have for
Yeah.
this. But again, like I like that was the catalyst. Like we're 9 episodes in. If Eddie's going to be clued into anything, it's probably going to be from that plus anything that he's seen in the past like 8 episodes. I think it's meant to build off of how he handles it. You're meant to see like, hey, like this guy's a good guy. You don't really want him to be with Iris, but you can't blame them for being together either. Like you have
Yeah.
no grounds to like object to this because of just how good of a guy he is. And that's what makes it more tragic later on when he shoots himself.
Yeah.
But his last
Sorry,
name is
spoilers.
Thawne. We have to hate him.
Yeah, but that's again,
Yeah.
that's a good drama that they've set up too, where they're just like, oh, his last name. If you're, they were smart because if you're not familiar with the comics, then he's just the boyfriend character, and if you are familiar with the comics, you think, oh, this guy's the Reverse Flash. If you're not catching on to the Harrison Wells stuff, so for like 9 episodes or so, you think he's the Reverse Flash, and so you're not supposed to like him still, but they still make you like him. So like it's the way that they play around with that, like that's the quality of being aware of audience expectations and playing around with that and questioning and challenging that is it's a testament to what's there in season one as opposed to later seasons where they don't have those elements.
Yeah. And I also, before we get into the big bad of this episode, I did like that and going back to the force field thing, that like you have
Mm-hmm.
that moment, like it kind of clues you more in where like he kills all the other Reverse Flash kills all the other police, but he kind of just looks like gets really close and kind of just like faces off with Eddie, and it's one of
Mm-hmm.
those moments where he's wondering like what's happening kind of thing. And then Joe
Mm-hmm.
actually reveals to him, because he's asked directly like, did you know about this kind of stuff, and he reveals he did know about metahumans, but he obviously doesn't reveal the Flash's identity, and I thought that was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought so too. I think it's a big clue too to the audience who are the comic book fans to be like, okay, Eddie's not the Reverse Flash, but he's likely, Thawne's from the future if you're a comic book fan. So like he's likely the ancestor, which he is. So it kind of explains that aspect. But yeah, I thought that was really well done too, because I do remember Barry, how Eddie finds out later on, and I was just like, does that happen this soon? Is that just about to happen right now? But then they find their way out of that. And if I were Eddie, I'd just be like, but Joe, you didn't really answer my question.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely for me, it's I think that you have to also put yourself in the framing of the time. This show, the reason it was so popular is because we were fresh off Smallville at this time,
Mm-hmm.
or pretty soon, and a lot of the tropes that were from those kind of shows, this show kind of subverted. by like speeding it up, by like not to its detriment in some ways, like, you know, like fast tracking a lot of this stuff so that they made the
For
best
sure.
season they possibly could. And so that's why this show was so popular then, was because it did unexpected things that audiences usually you'd wait seasons to be like, you know, like you said earlier, Ben, with Joe, or like just certain other things, they'd be like, screw it, like we're just go ahead and reveal this now, like more realistically than waiting like 2 or 3 seasons and
Oh yeah.
dragging that whole thing out.
If they did like Smallville, Joe would have found out in like season 4 and then like died or something. Like it's the pacing. That's what I loved about the Arrowverse, was because I was so used to like Smallville's pacing, where like it was such a big thing when somebody found out like 6 seasons in about Clark's powers, and then it was just like, shit, they're doing it now. They're doing it in episode 10.
Yep.
That was amazing. But to speak to what you were saying, Alex, like, yeah, in some ways, like the original Eddie Thawne or Tommy Merlin was Whitney in Smallville. If anyone remembers Whitney, like he was on his boyfriend, and like, yeah, like he was more flawed. I think like he's involved in putting Clark up in that scarecrow thing in the pilot, but he was kind of like the rival guy who was also kind of, we found, like a good guy in the first season, and only lasted really for that season, and was more or less an original character, but it was sort of meant to be there to serve as the guy who you're a little bit conflicted about when it comes to the love triangle, when they kind of carried that trope into you know, Tommy Merlin and Eddie Thawne over here into I think better results, or at least more memorable results, because I don't really remember much about Whitney except for how they wrote him off.
Yeah. The war, the nondescript war, and that
in
that show, yeah.
That was weird.
And they also continued that same trope later when Jensen Ackles comes over onto the show, and it's basically him and Clark and Lana. Yeah.
Do you remember that brief detour? Do you remember what their relationship was? It was something that would not play today.
Yes.
Oh,
so
yes.
Jensen Ackles came on, and he's like, I'm the football coach at the high school. And I'm like, wait, so the football coach at the high school is going out with like a junior student?
They
didn't know what to do. I mean, yes. Yeah, in hindsight, it's a really weird role for Jensen Ackles, who's obviously like probably has gone on to be an even bigger, more popular actor than the main leads in Smallville in some ways.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's the role that he got out of everything. But I know that he had previously auditioned for Clark, actually on that show. But
he would have worn the suit.
He would have worn. Yeah, he would have worn this.
It's just cool that they progressed from football coach and high school student to sister and brother in the Flash show. Yeah,
both aren't great. Let's be real.
Yeah, that and Oliver had his things with sisters too.
With 2 sisters.
Yeah.
It somehow feels like the least problematic out of the 3.
Yes,
situations.
For sure.
Yeah, there's no step sibling weirdness in that one.
Nope.
Anyway, so we're gonna go ahead and get into this Reverse Flash that we have here is obviously different than the ones we get later on. I think this is the best version of the Reverse Flash. Like for season 1, he has that personal attachment, almost like a parental attachment to Barry, where he's like almost like, because he even goes into it later, but where he needs him obviously to progress. He hates him, but also he's grown attached to him, and I think that's a great like twist to do on this villain that usually in the comics just outright hates him, which I know they play that later with the Reverse Flash, but I think this is the best version. I'm kind of sad that this version didn't get to continue later.
No, for sure. It is the most complex version. I think later on, even when Tom came back to play this role, it was always kind of more one note. You know, it was more of just like, now I'm just evil Reverse Flash. I'm just like, you're missing they're missing the dynamic. You're missing the aspect that made it so good. That it's a shame. You know, it's a shame that it turned into that. But what a foundation. You know, like what a foundation they built up in season 1 with with this dynamic and sort of you knowing what's up and also knowing that it's not such a clear-cut thing where he's completely evil, because you know that he's responsible for Barry becoming a hero in this, and that type of relationship is I think even better than what's in the comics, frankly, because they don't have that really mentor student type of relationship where we need each other type of aspect to it. And I also really like that the fact that there were consequences to Thawne going back in time and killing Barry's mom, where he's like stuck there and stuff and all that led there, because it kind of just feels like Thawne's just able to do that in the comics, and there's no like Flashpoint type of universe thing that happens when he does that. He kind of is just able to do that. Meanwhile, Barry tries to undo what Thawne did to retcon his past and creates Flashpoint. So I don't know how that works. But in this show, at least, they're just like, hey, like, here are the consequences for Thawne when he does that. And I think they thought it through really well, and arguably better than what's in the source material when it comes to that aspect.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yep, I would also agree. I think one thing that's really cool with that dynamic in season 1, it kind of leans into the fact that in the future, Eobard was actually a huge Flash fan and things like that. And so it's like getting to work with your hero up close to an extent in some ways. And so I think that kind of also aided that relationship. But kind of like you said earlier, Ben, too, with Tom Cavanaugh, you remember him from Ed. I remember him from doing a couple of guest spots on Scrubs, I think, and stuff like that, too. But I had no idea that he had the level of range as an actor that he has in this season to completely sell the character of Harrison Wells. The flawed man may he be, even with some of the more compassionate scenes, some of his scenes with Joe and stuff like that. And then just being actually the Reverse Flash the whole time too was man, his acting was phenomenal this season.
Yeah. Definitely. I know that he basically, like, I really do like, speaking of his range and everything, like and in general, like, I guess I'll just get into his actual plan and just like how you see him play, like, obviously the Reverse Flash with just the creepiness of him, and he's almost like this like I don't know how else to describe it, like it's almost like this boogeyman, and like how they blur out his face and everything. And I hate that they abandoned that later, because I think honestly, like, I do like how that suit looks, but it kind of makes it creepier when they make it vibrate like that. Like I think something was lost later when they took away the red eyes and all that stuff and his later appearances. What do you guys think about that?
Oh, for sure.
I fully agree. Personally, I think the first 2 seasons of this show, and not to talk too much about something that happens in the future, but when you see Reverse Flash this season with the vibrating face, and you see Zoom in season 2, both of these characters look very fearsome, and they look like they could actually do some damage. There feels like there's actual stakes, and like Barry is in actual danger whenever he's in a lot of those fights, whereas some of the later seasons, it doesn't always feel that way.
Right. No, totally. And when they come back, like when the Reverse Flash suit upgrade they give Tom is not much of an upgrade when you get to when you get those seasons. It's rough.
Yeah. I've heard, and we're not going to go too far into the future, but I've heard there's a theory on why it looks so bad, or why it looks like it's like ill-fitting, is I think it was designed to fit Grant Gustin, that yellow suit, and then they tried to make it fit Tom Cavanaugh as well. That's just what I've heard online. I don't know if there's any actual validity to that, but it would make sense.
That sounds kind of like Andy Muschietti talking about the CGI and the
supposed to be like this.
It's supposed to be bad.
I don't know why you wouldn't just reuse the same suit. It's not like Tom Cavanaugh, like obviously everyone's aging, but like he's not in that much different shape later on in the season. He's not that dramatically different. So I don't know why you wouldn't just. They also end up reusing it anyway when Matt Letcher comes back, so it's not like they didn't have it around.
It looks better.
And they even put Amel back in the Arrow suit after he hadn't been doing the same Arrow training after a while too.
Yeah. Well, that's a looser suit, I feel like, too, though. I don't know. Like that later season suits, like I don't know if you guys noticed this, in the later seasons of Arrow, he does a lot less of the shirtless scenes and a lot less of the doing the
salmon
exercises. Yeah, you can kind of notice, like, it's like let's
I
cut
think he had the
that.
shirt on the last time he does the salmon ladder. I'm just like, all right,
Yeah.
Mel's just tired of the shirtless scenes.
Yeah, I mean the
Yeah.
guy's still in like fantastic shape,
Oh yeah.
obviously, but
Mhm.
like
Oh yeah.
it's not like season one. Like you can tell like a body difference. But anyway, I think that with the suit though, for the reverse flash, like I think that they knew that a solid yellow suit wouldn't look great, and that's why they did the me and you theorized last time, Will, that maybe the suit was
Mhm.
like burnt, maybe from how I always theorized
Ooh,
it was how
yeah.
fast he was going, maybe, and that was my
Mhm.
head canon reason for why it looked like that.
Well,
But
he definitely got burnt in this episode. That's for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Firestorm had something to say about
Aha.
that.
Yes.
Yeah. That was great. But yeah, like I'm trying to think. Oh, going back to the whole like Harrison Wells basically playing everyone.
Mhm.
He gets the tachyon thing there, and the whole thing of like on the rewatch, obviously, that like he's just playing everybody. He's literally having them
Mhm.
deliver the thing he needs on a silver platter, and like that's crazy. He's like, oh, we'll find him, we'll find a way to get him and everything, and like it's so like methodical and everything when you really get down to it and actually think about it. Like that's really great. And then the whole thing, like they show their hand in the way that like the first episode, that this guy isn't great. And I even love the added detail of Green Arrow in the previous episode. Like after
Mhm.
talking to him at the end, I love this. He was just like something off about that guy. Like I love
Mhm.
that like he keys into there's something off about Harrison Wells.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also liked watching this from the perspective of like you're watching, hey, like it's 2014, you're suspecting that Reverse Flash is either Harrison Wells or Eddie Thawne, and then they do this mind fuck thing where it's Eddie Thawne, Reverse Flash, and Harrison Wells all in the same room, and you're just
Yeah.
like, well, now I don't know, and then he beats the shit out of Harrison Wells, and you're just like, now I really don't know, and he saves Eddie, but like you're just like, is it future Eddie? Is it this or that? So like, but they finally do reveal what it is at the very end, but I just liked. I think they were very smart with how they handled knowing the fact that hey, we're going to have people who are tuning in who know the comics and people who are tuning in who don't know the comics. So we have to find a way to appeal to both. And I think one of the big upgrades they did from the 2011 feature script was to come up with the Harrison Wells name. Because in the movie it's like, oh, he's Dr. Eobard Thawne, and then all the comic fans are just like, it's Eobard, it's just the Reverse Flash. They're doing the Leonardo DiCaprio
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
The Reverse Flash, it's him, he's the villain. But like they make you second guess, when it's like, oh, it's Eddie Thawne and Dr. Harrison Wells, and you're just like, well, Eddie's clearly Eobard, right? And then you're watching it and he's like such a good guy and he has no, he doesn't seem at all like the Eobard Thawne in the comics, and there's no, that there is a Reverse Flash, but you think maybe it's him, but then Harrison Wells clearly has stuff. Like they play around with your expectations, whether you know the comics or not. And I thought that was really smart. And that's one of the things that, even though it does get a little tiresome whenever they do the like, hey, we pulled the rug from under you. It's not Lex Luthor. He's actually Steel. I'm just like, all right, fine, you did it again. It at least keeps you guessing. Like it was nice to know that they were like Reverse Flash several steps ahead of you. They were always, several steps ahead of your expectations and what you could guess based off of whether you knew the comics or not.
Yeah, definitely. And also this is just unrelated, but I remember back when I know we spoke earlier about York Tech, this place me and Will went to college together. We met in college, but that this episode came out on December 9th, like a few days before my birthday. So it was actually like back then I remember being like, oh, it's like a nice nice birthday present for me basically before my birthday and before like the mid-season break, which do you guys remember that being like was that much more of a thing like later on the mid-season finale? I know that they started calling like before the break the episode the whole mid-season thing. Do you guys remember that being like a thing before this, or like I don't know?
Yes. Well, Arrow did sort of a similar thing when they got through the halfway mark of their season, pretty much. I remember it because I was a broke college student who didn't have much else to do other than watch these shows, and I was like, oh, dang, what am I going to do for the next 2 months?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember it being a thing because I wasn't watching nearly as like Arrowverse got me into watching a ton of shows, obviously. So like, it, but I knew that there were like these things existed. You know, like you need breaks so that the writers can write the new episodes, they can film the new episodes and stuff. It's not all like pre-done. It also gives them like kind of an adjustment to they know what the fan responses are and what characters click and which things don't, and gives them the ability to change things which they wouldn't have been able to change had they written all 24 episodes right beforehand, in advance. So it is cool to sort of go back to those days, and take a look at how things could have been like things changed along the way. I'm sure they still had the plans of like, this is Reverse Flash's big plan, but in terms of like the firestorm aspect of it, in terms of what exactly was going to happen to Eddie, I'm not really convinced that they knew from the very beginning what they were going to do with that.
Right.
But it's one of those things where the breaks give you, they get frustrating, but if you know what's going on, why they take the break. It gives you like goalposts. It gives the writers like goalposts to lead up to, so that you kind of feel somewhat satisfied before there's like a 2-month long break.
Right.
And it was also 24 episodes of a 40-minute long show, whereas now we get like 6 episodes of a 30-minute show on most streaming services. So they definitely
Sometimes
needed
like
that
over an
break too.
hour. Yeah,
Yeah,
like Stranger Things episodes are now like feature length long, and I'm just like, you're making 6 movies, guys. You're not making a TV
yeah,
show at this point.
exactly.
Yeah. That's definitely, that was one of the things. I know me and Will definitely get into this and some of the episodes before this when we actually go back and review them. But on a rewatch, you definitely notice. I would never call them padding because each episode kind of like it will have the aspect of being episodic, but also like having the serialized like connective tissue like in it, and like that was just much more of a trope because like they have to fill out, like they have a number of episodes they have to fill. So I mean, there was and we'll get to it in an earlier episode, but there's that one episode that has General Eiling in it that's the Clancy Brown. I
Clancy Brown,
remember
yeah.
him, but I don't even
Yes.
remember the girl. I forgot that she
It was
was even
plastique.
in it.
Yep.
She was, I'm not. I was gonna be mean. She was not great in that
It
in
was
that
not memorable.
episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, at all. Like the actress didn't do a great job. Like I'm sure it's not her fault, but they have day players sometimes play these villains, and then you sometimes you get great performances, and then like sometimes they bring the big guns. Like they have Wentworth Miller play Captain Cold, which we'll definitely get into when we go to that episode. But and then sometimes you get like multiplex or like the mist, which that guy did good with what he had. Multiplex was so forgettable, bro.
Yeah.
I forgot that Anthony Carrigan was the Mist. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you love him so much in Gotham and stuff like Barry,
Yep.
and now he's going to be Metamorpho, and then you look back, oh yeah, he was in the Flash for like one episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. I think that we're reaching the end of this, but we will go ahead and do our thing that we always do at the end of the episode and see if it delivered on 3 of these aspects. Famously, above the writer's room, the producer would put up if it had like heart, humor, and spectacle. And we always grade these by if it had all of these things. So I'll go first. I think that it definitely had heart with the scene with him and Barry and his dad. That was really good. It definitely had some humorous moments. Having a hard time remembering them now, but I know it definitely did.
It was not as funny as other episodes.
Yeah. It was toned down on the humor. It was more so to introduce us to this big villain that we've been looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe not as much on the humor one, but spectacle definitely. I mean, it starts out the gate with the whole like him running after Reverse Flash, that big we forgot to mention it, but that big fight scene in the football stadium, which I remember seeing back then and being like just kind of blown away by how like cool that looked. Because speaking of before, we had like Smallville, and Smallville's fights sucked. I'm sorry. Like I know they didn't
Yes.
have a lot of money then, but he would just throw somebody into a wall or punch him twice, and that was the end of the fight. So
Well, he was
Yeah.
Superman, so
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. He actually had fights here, unlike
Mhm.
and the other that was used to sell me on Arrow too, because and I know it's a whole different show, but the whole Doomsday fight, I think he just punched him twice and then threw him into the ground, and that was
Oh
the
my
end
God.
of one of the most epic fights in the comics. That was the end they had in Smallville.
They really shouldn't have even touched Doomsday. I don't know what they were thinking.
Yeah, but yeah, and then like that whole thing was really great. The whole forgot to touch on this really quick. He kept saying, and I'm going to ask your guys' opinion on this. Was he
Mhm.
talking about the future when Reverse Flash kept saying like you know me, like you know who I am, kind of thing, or was he saying like open your eyes, like you like the clues are there, you know who I am, or was he talking just collectively like in the future you'll know who I am, like that whole like nemesis thing?
I'll lean towards the latter because, like, again, we know he's Wells, and Wells knows what Barry knows and doesn't know.
Yeah.
So I think maybe some part of it is, um, if he's doing 40 chess, he's saying that so that Barry considers him to be a future foe, which means that he's not considering his present day people
Yeah.
during that. So that's a possibility, as well as just hinting to Flash about like what he's going to be to him in the future, but knowing that this is actually from Barry's perspective their first encounter.
Yeah. What do you think,
I
Will?
would fully agree with the same thing, man. The latter, just because I see it as kind of like a redirection thing. Like, oh, look here, but not even realizing that all along I've been right
Mm-hmm.
here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting. But yeah, definitely the spectacle. Like we get that big fight. We get multiple fights actually, and it's
Mm-hmm.
really cool seeing something. I know the CGI by modern standards doesn't look amazing, but just you got to put yourself in the shoes of back when this show was coming out, and just seeing anything on that level was like your mind was blown. Like seeing that kind of thing, seeing superhero action like that, because you weren't used to seeing that from like a TV show back then. They didn't really have that many competitors back then. This was before Daredevil. This was before all these other shows came out. Like they were almost the only game in town back then.
I would say the CG is better than in the movie.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And the later seasons.
yes.
Yeah.
Later
But
seasons can at least be explained by like the budget going down, but the movie, I'm like, okay, why
Yes.
why does this? When we're watching this, I'm like, this looks better, and then I'm like,
Yeah. For
what we
for me,
saw
it's
in the
like if Zack Snyder can make the Green Lantern look somewhat decent in his backyard, it's like you guys
Yeah.
should be able to do a little bit more as a movie studio with
movie.
what you're using.
Oh,
You know?
totally.
Right. But yeah, did you you guys the heart humor spectacle, did you guys want to go into like what aspects you think delivered on those three things or didn't?
For sure, I'll start, man.
Mhm.
I don't think it had a lot of humor, but I will say heart and spectacle, and I'm gonna say the same reason for both. Something that we didn't talk nearly enough about. My guy Ronnie, Robbie Amell,
Mhm.
back in this episode.
Mhm.
I think he's probably in this whole universe one of the more disappointing characters, just because he's pretty much just gone for forever, and
Mhm.
he's actually a pretty solid actor. So I would have liked to have seen more of Ronnie
Yeah.
throughout this whole thing, but scheduling things and all this other stuff, and he had a pretty promising career at that time
Mhm.
as well. But all the stuff with Caitlin, missing out on him, and that whole dynamic with Cisco and all of them like feeling guilty for everything at the time still.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of heart with that, but the spectacle, man, when you see him show up and like save Barry in that moment, that was the best.
Awesome.
That was the climax of the episode for me. Yeah.
Nice.
Definitely.
The main humor thing I remember was the Christmas tree stuff. with Joe, where he's Joe's just like, okay, come on. Like there's only one guy in a red suit I want in this place. And he undoes the Christmas stuff for Joe. And it speaks to what we were talking about earlier too, that you guys were saying, like Barry having fun with his powers. It's such a kind of refreshing to see that, and considering how much more of a burden it feels like on Grant's version of the character later in the seasons. Mm-hmm. So like it does have humor, just not a ton of it, but that's okay because I think it would have been out of place for something that's supposed to set up like the big bad of the season. So definitely has the other aspects. The heart for sure. Like we cited different aspects in terms of his stuff with Iris, his stuff with his dad, everything going on with Caitlin and Cisco as well. Like the part where Caitlin talks about wanting to see Ronnie one more time, and the fact that she got it, but she wishes that she didn't, considering who he was. Like that felt very emotionally real and raw. And I remember being somewhat amazed by that type of scene because I'm just like, we don't get that type of scenes in later seasons. Nothing that emotional. There's something that feels like that emotionally true and stuff, because it kind of it felt like it came from the perspective of somebody who was feeling of how that would be like, truly feeling how that would be like for that character. Because let's face it, like Ronnie's kind of just set up as sort of a comic book Easter egg. He could have easily just been a comic book Easter egg. Oh, we got Firestorm here, but they went into the emotional truth of how that would have an effect on this version of Caitlin. And it speaks to what made this show what made us fall in love with this type of show and really love this version of the characters is how emotionally true they stayed to, what those experiences would be like for these people, that, and Joe talking to Barry at the end about like, hey, like, I need Barry, like I need the optimistic Barry who was, in this house and stuff. And you changed our lives too. Like that's all that type of stuff is just so emotional and so much the cornerstone of why the show was successful with people, and kind of an aspect that is hard to top, when it comes to other live action versions of the Flash. I do like Flash 1990, but it was done in a different time where like highly emotional scenes like that kind of would have felt out of place in like an action superhero type of thing. But in 2014, they were able to mix that in with, like Alex said, the heart, humor, spectacle being on the writer's room. And the season is where I think they succeed the most.
Yeah, definitely. And I will actually retroactively add that scene to the humor part because you're right, like that was a very humorous scene. So like it hits all three quadrants for me. I'm gonna go into my rating for it. We usually do it out of 5 lightning bolts, and this is 5 out of 5 lightning bolts, a perfect episode in my opinion. And yeah, I think this and maybe the pilot are the only ones so far we haven't reviewed that many episodes though, so we'll definitely probably have a few more, but like that's definitely 5 out of 5, perfect episode, great, has you really chomping at the bit, wanting to see where this goes, wanting to definitely see more. So yeah, great episode. Ben or Will, whoever wants to go next.
Go ahead, Will.
Yeah. Well, this was actually a really tough one for me. I gotta be honest. 5 out of 5 lightning bolts for sure. It's definitely like this is probably, with the exception of the finale, this is probably the best episode of the season. I think everyone mostly agree on that. Yeah, this is a kick-ass episode for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I'd agree with that. Like even the blackmail scene will not bring it down a lightning bolt. Something should be like, how much does that bring it down? But I'm just like, there's so much other good stuff in it, and it's like, it is very clearly them saying like Barry's been acting out of character or like should sit this one out because of how involved he is with it. That they kind of acknowledge it in a way, not as directly as I would have hoped if they were going to put that in, but they still acknowledge it. So that's not enough to bring it down. And yeah, I totally agree. Like this is pretty much, it's near the pinnacle, and the pinnacle would be that finale for season 1 for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So obviously I'm gonna give I'm gonna give Ben you the time to plug your stuff, and then we'll start
Sure.
doing our outro. So go ahead, Ben.
Awesome. So you guys can check me out over at Superhero Stuff You Should Know podcast. We're over on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. I've also been doing some writing on my own. I have a short story called Shortcut to Happily Ever After that was published in Metaphorosis magazine. So you guys can check that out. There's basically a narrated podcast version at the Metaphorosis magazine podcast, and there's also the text version online at the Metaphorosis magazine website. I also have been starting to do scripted podcasts for Newverse Creative. That is Neuverse. They do audio dramas for superhero type of scripts, unmade scripts specifically, but sometimes like little short stories. And so the main one that's been released is Batman 89, Case of the Chemical Syndicate. That is an audio drama that adapts the very first Batman story, but is presented in a way that serves as a prequel to the 89 Batman movie, with Danny Elfman type of music and like people who are emulating Michael Keaton's Batman and Pat Hingle's Gordon and stuff. And it's a fun time. And there's more on the way with other ones set in the Burtonverse and maybe some other ones that are not set in the Burtonverse that I can't really talk about right now. But those are the main ones that I've got going on. So check all that stuff out. And thanks a lot for your support.
Yeah, definitely. I'll go into my stuff really quick, but before I do that, we definitely do support the writers and the Actors Guild here. And we are all for equal pay, not just with the writers, but with all jobs across the board, like fair pay. Like people need to be paid more. And this isn't the first time there's been a strike. I can count the number of times. Like there's another time I even remember where during Smallville's run where there was a writer's strike. So clearly stuff that
2007.
shit that needed to change has not changed yet. That's unacceptable and it needs to change. So I just wanted to go ahead and put that out there. We stand with them. Stand with them more than the Mel, apparently, but hey, there it is what it is. All jokes aside, we are with you, writers. And hey, if there was a strike going on near me, I would happily be on that picket line. So anyway, guys, do what you can. I include a link in the description to support the Writers Guild and their efforts. So that's out there. And I'll go ahead and get into my stuff. Obviously, you guys know Flashbacks, a Flash Rewatch podcast, which is what you're currently listening to. We are on Spotify. And I think we might be on Stitcher, but I think Stitcher might be going away soon.
You might be on Stitcher, but Stitcher might not be on anywhere.
Yeah. We are Night of the Batman, the show. Yeah. The show that me and my wife do, Night of the Batman, which she always says people tune in to hear her, is on Spotify. Yeah, it's her in the background, but anyway,
she heard you.
Yeah, it's her show. But and then I also have What Mean, which I'll eventually bring back at some point. There's some behind the scenes stuff I just need to find, need to get the platform back up for that, and get that stuff situated. But there will be episodes in the future. And I'll also have with my buddy who Will knows as well, a trip. We do the Tangential Exchange where we drink and try to stay on topic. That's our most laid back show. We have a lot of fun doing that. So definitely check
which
that out.
I will be on soon too. So
yes, definitely. So that one weirdly gets a lot of views, which is so funny because that's just for me and him basically just to joke back and forth. So it's always awesome when like the one that you're like, this is just for me, guys. It's cool you're watching, but I would be doing this anyway. But yeah. So Will, did you have anything you wanted to plug or?
Oh yeah, well I'm Will, obviously. I don't have anything going on. I just pop up on your podcast from time to time. I'm just kidding. Definitely working on something in the background for sure. Should be coming soon in the podcast format as well, but it's a little hush hush right now. We're getting some saving up some money and stuff because I want to do it just right. But yeah. Also, justice for Patty Spivot in season 2.
Yeah, sorry.
They should have never got rid of Patty.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry.
The behind the scenes story on that, right?
Oh yeah, I know. Yes. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's horrible. I just wish that I don't know. She was such a great character, so I wish they would have gotten rid of the problematic people a little bit quicker.
Definitely. But yeah, sorry for that interruption on your outro there, Will. But
Oh, you're good. I'm not important. It's okay.
now what are you talking about? You're my constant
Me,
co-host.
your wife.
You're right.
But
Does Amanda have anything she wants to plug?
No, I think that she's currently just trying to finish the Kingdom Hearts stuff. But
Gotcha.
anyway, as I say at the end of every episode, thank you for listening to Flashbacks, and we will see you in the Speed Force. The Two-Face figure. I actually have a funny story with that. My dad's dog bit the foot off the Tommy Lee Jones figure, and so I was really upset. And so my dad, he got me a new Two-Face one, but in the meantime, he actually really appreciated that. I was telling my wife, like, I actually prefer the version he got, but he made out of like duct tape like a foot for it, like he rebuilt like a foot for it. So like I just appreciated that, and I'm like, honestly, I could get the original like figure for it, but if I could find the one with the duct tape foot, that would matter a little bit more. Speaking of
something you associate with your dad. Yeah.